We are so close to the end game here. There's just one more member of the Order of No Quarter remaining. So let's put an end to their menace by climbing the Clockwork Tower. Once more, you can see that I have new armor. This screen doesn't do a very good job of letting me show off what it does though, so I'll explain it when it becomes more appropriate. For now, I just want to point out that if you remember that time back in Spectre Knight stage, I said there was a level that is arguably more Castlevania. Well, what Castlevania game is complete without a clock tower? As you can tell, this stage has a lot of conveyor belts and gears. This is very similar to Metal Man stage back in Mega Man 2. Unlike that game, where I always do Metal Man stage first, this is the stage I tend to do last. I just think that's kind of personally funny. Conveyor belts don't really have much in common with Castlevania though, so we'll be seeing some more of the Castlevania specific stuff a bit later. Now these rats, while similar to the ones in Plague Knight stage, are honestly way less annoying. They do speed up pretty quickly if they catch wind of you, but so long as you're not on the same level as them, there really isn't much they can do. Now, keeping up with the theme of being way less annoying, these Grey Mages are honestly the least threatening of the bunch in my opinion. The gears they create always travel along the ground, so their pattern is very predictable. On top of that, I could just bounce off of them and not take any damage, and if I'm feeling saucy, I can just hit them out of the way. As long as I'm not moving, I'm not going to take any damage. It's pretty rare these guys get in any hits on me. And coming up are some very big gears, with which I can finally show off what this new, definitely not overpowered armor does. This armor is the Dynamo Mail, and with it, if you bounce off of anything twice in succession, it doesn't have to be the same object twice, just as long as you pogo twice in a row, you start to flash. Now what is this flash? It's a stored charge attack. Yep, that's right. For just doing what you would probably do normally in the game anyway, you now get free charge attacks that don't even slow you down when you're holding it. Normally when you're charging a charge attack, you're slowed down. It's kind of gross. This is easily, by far, the best armor in the game, in my opinion. There is one armor later in the game that I prefer to use over it, just because I like it more, but this one definitely has the most mechanical use. If you are a new player that is having trouble beating the game, please buy this armor as soon as possible. It'll pay off in spades. These big guys probably have the biggest range out of any normal enemy in the game. Sure, the mages might have longer range, but these guys swing their gears around in big circular fashion that cover a lot of ground. That being said, they're honestly not that bad. The patterns of the gears are very predictable, and they attack pretty slowly. There's really only going to be one or maybe two screens later in the stage that really take advantage of the crazy range. They're not hard to beat, they just take a lot of hits. Now this level is Castlevania. Everyone loves a good Medusa head type enemy that flies in from off screen in a wavy pattern that can be hard to track. If this game didn't have those green fan guys in Propeller Knight stage, I might say these are the worst enemies in the game. But the green fan guys do exist. And nuts to those green fan guys. The mobile gear is a really weird item. Honestly, I never really used this item. The mobile gear is a platform that you can throw out, and it'll carry you across the ground, jump over gaps, and cross over spikes. Normally, I'm a very vocal proponent of being able to create platforms at will in a platformer, because that's just a busted thing to do. But something about the mobile gear just doesn't really click with me. I'm sure there's some speedrunners out there that have put this thing to crazy use, but outside of one very special case later in this game, it just really doesn't do anything for me. Alright, we got some neat new platforms here, if that's what you want to call them. They're not really platforms. It's kind of like a vertical conveyor belt. If you try to stand on it, you will slowly be rolled off, so you have to keep jumping to stay on it. They look kind of goofy, but I think it's an appropriate new type of platforming challenge. They're not going to use it a whole lot throughout the rest of the game, I think just a few more times in this stage. But when they do use it, it's used in pretty interesting and sometimes creative ways. Here we have a more aggressive version of the beetle sections from Mole Knight stage. It's still not technically an auto-scroller, and this one doesn't have a fun, bouncy butt pad, but this one comes with the usual thing of trying to get around obstacles fast enough to keep up with the moving platform. This one is also littered with more enemies, so it can be pretty tough, as well as its tendency to put extra treasure a little bit off the beaten path to kind of try and lure you into precarious situations. Oh no, now we have the dreaded Grey Knight! These guys are just a combination of the Green and Red Knights, so double attacks as well as pogo attacks. That being said, they still take just as many hits to defeat as any other regular knight. I don't like this screen. It's a pain. The platform is so slow and high up that if you get knocked off, there's really nothing you can do but wait for it to come back around so you can get back on. And the gear guys with their massive range definitely does not help in the department of not getting knocked off the platform. So screw them, get the music sheet, get out. I don't have to kill this knight. This way just leads back to where I came from. But, I just feel like doing it. Well, we had a sort of auto-scroller, and now we have a legitimate auto-scroller. This screen is definitely the most Castlevania thing in the game. It's a tall climb through a clock tower with Medusa heads bombarding you, and on top of that, much like Castlevania, since this is an auto-scroller, if I fell off the bottom of the screen, even though that's where I came from, I will die immediately. I know in the last video I said that that is a kind of crappy way to handle verticality in retro games, but that's because of that clip of Castlevania that I showed off that wasn't an auto-scroller. I'm willing to forgive it in this case when it's obvious the screen itself is part of the challenge. The problem with Castlevania is you can just walk up some stairs and then walk back down and die for no reason. Here, we have no idea what's causing the screen to move up. We don't know what's chasing Shovel Knight. We don't know what darkness lies below. Tinker Knight is an absolutely brutal boss fight. He actively runs around the entire screen and tries to hit you with his wrench, but the wrench boomerangs back. I know Ray's had boomerangs, but those just traveled around and bounced off the edges of the screen. These wrenches are a direct line, which makes attacking head-on wildly unsafe. On top of that, sometimes Tinker Knight will jump. He just jumped over that drop spark. My ranged attacks aren't even remotely reliable in this fight. But the worst thing about him is that projectile barrage. To this day, I am eternally grateful I managed to slip away from that because I have no idea how I would have dodged any of that stuff if I was any closer. It's bosses like these that are obvious they belong at the end of the game. I was just barely equipped to take them on. Alright, that's enough funny business. The real Tinker Knight fight starts now. Though the real shame here is that, well, as astoundingly cool as this is, he's actually incredibly easy. After using the missiles to climb on top of the mech, it's just a matter of staying up here. As long as you don't get knocked off, there's pretty much nothing he can do to hurt you. Sometimes he backs up real fast in an attempt to shake you off, but it's not too hard to stay on top of his drill. Really, the only thing you're in danger of here is that one shoulder missile that fires towards the right. But if you can avoid that, well, it's not too much trouble to turn this mech into a pile of scrap.